everybody. It's just the right size group, right? It's not too big, it's not too small. It's a Friday, it's kind of nice. I have a long history in IT. Before I did this, I've worked over 25 years in IT. So I learned a long time ago, you should assume your technology is going to go down. So what I'm going to do is show you screenshots of what I did, because then if, Perusall is not cooperating, I can still show you. But I have Perusall up, and I'll be happy to demonstrate anything that you want to see, either during the conversation or at the end. I think maybe at the end would be better, only because you'll have a better understanding of what you're looking at. But please feel free to stop me at any point if you want to see something demonstrated, okay? So I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint. A couple times I'm going to zoom in, so I'm not going to full screen this because I want to zoom in a couple of times and show you some specific things. But the purpose of my talk today was to share how I use Purusall to increase engagement in my asynchronous course. So 2 things for background. What is Purusall? If you haven't used Purusall before, it's a social engagement tool. It's integrated into Canvas. And as far as how I used it, it's useful for group reading activities, and that sort of, as we said, an alternative to discussion boards when you want students to discuss material. I used it this past summer for epidemiology of aging. It was an 8-week summer course, fully asynchronous, which was my challenge. Is I knew students weren't going to come in person, but I still wanted them to talk to each other. I had 12 MPH, or Master of Public Health students, enrolled in the course. So yeah, so that was where I got this experience. I had tested Perusall a little bit prior to that. I used it as a peer review tool in my online biostatistics course. But prior to this summer course, I had never used it integrated into an actual lesson before, or an entire course before. So as I was thinking about how I was going to explain this to you and not be all over the place, I kind of came up with 10 things I want you to know about what I did and why I liked Purusall. So I'm going to do it like that, like top 10. So the first thing is it's fully integrated with Canvas, and I really like this. And when we finish going through them, I can show you how this works. But you create the assignment in Purusall, and it appears in Canvas under your assignments tab. Can you see this, Igor? You can see it okay? Okay, all right. I should have asked that about 2 minutes ago. So you create the assignment, it shows up in Canvas, so you don't have to dual create your assignments. It also automatically shows up in your grading screen, so you don't have to have 2 gradings. Students are automatically assigned to the assignments, but the instructor has the ability to edit or personalize that if you want some students to do the activity and not others. I do that in peer review. Only the students that submit their drafts for peer review are included in the assignment. Setting up the integration is very easy. It's well documented. I figured it out. Now, I do have a background in IT, but I really didn't find that it was challenging at all. And then, as I said, it's integrated with the grading. So you can grade the assignments in Perusall, and Perusall actually does an auto grading. You just need to adjust it if you want to. And then you click a button, which is what I have right here. You click the button and it automatically pushes the grades over to Canvas. Takes about a minute or 2, and it's already there. So you can see, here's an example of an assignment. It only creates, when it creates the assignment in Canvas, it's only this piece here, the launch button, but then you have the ability to go in and add instructions. So I found this really easy to set up. You can customize the size of your discussion groups. So when you first set this up, you tell Perusall how many students are in the class and how big you want your groups to be. And then it will automatically create your groups. But sometimes I wanted to personally manage who was in a group. Like I had some really strong students, and a couple of times they all ended up together. And so I personally would move them around before the module started. So you have full ability to move people around. There's actually even just a little reshuffle button if you want to use it, to make sure that you've got a good grouping of people. I had this weird thing where I had a weird grouping of students, and so I would always have one student that ended up by themselves, and I had to go in and manually move it. The groups are created by item in your library, so I'll show you this in a minute, but you might have an assignment where students are going to read, say, 3 articles. Each article is going to have a different grouping. So it won't necessarily be the same 3 people in each group, for all the way through the assignment. And at first I thought that was a con. I thought, well, that's weird because they're going to read the first article and they're going to be in a group with students A, B, C. And then the next article, they're going to be in a group with, students X, Y, Z. But I realized actually it was a pro, because what it meant is it was very likely that in the course of reading those couple of assigned articles, they probably talked to everybody in the entire group. So I personally left it. You can change that though. You have the ability to customize that. I realize this is all in abstract right now because you haven't seen it, but I will demonstrate this for you. Jason, did you have a question? Did you want to see that? Okay. All right. It's really easy to set up in management. So you add the materials into the library, and then you just set up a few options. It's very standardized. And then the assignment is ready to go. You can import articles, you can import links, you can actually, I have not done this, but supposedly you can actually work with the library or the bookstore, and you can put textbooks in here and have students do a group reading of your textbook readings. So there's a lot of customizability. In fact, I will show you that here. This is just a sandbox I've got. But if you see, you can bring a book from the Purusall catalog, you can bring in documents, you can bring in a page from Canvas, a website, you can create quizzes, videos, podcasts. So there's a lot of variety of material that you can bring in. And as I said, the groups are created by the item. So like if we look at this article here, we can see the groups. This is just a test group. It's a course design group in our department. So here's how the groups were set up, because I said I wanted about 2 people in a group, but I can take Peyton and move her down and move Julie up if I want to. So it's very easy to move them around if that's what I want to do. Okay. So there's lots of options to customize the assignment. So I've got a couple of screenshots here. Again, I'll show this to you, but I always assume it's going to be broken when I do my presentation. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. When you set up your document, so here's an article that I was going to that I had students read. You can choose which pages. I really like this because if it's a scientific article, I can skip the references at the end, and that helps me, as you'll see later, it helps me know if the students read the whole article or not. Because if I left the references as part of the assigned reading, well, then nobody's going to read the whole article because everybody's going to skip the last 3 pages. So I set it up so that it's only what I really want them to read. If you have a larger article, maybe it's a brochure or something, and you only want them to read a couple of pages, you can limit them to those pages, which I found really useful. The setup is very easy. It's hard for me to see that, but you set up instructions. It feels a lot like what you do in Canvas, but you can set the date that your students can access it, what their due date is. You can assign it to the whole class, to just certain students. I like for a peer review, you can require everything to be anonymous. And so in peer review, they don't even know who's making comments, which makes it much more likely that they're going to actually make comments. You can set it up as extra credit or optional assignment. So lots of options for setting it up, and they're very easy because they're all consistently placed. That's number 3. I really like the grading heuristics. What Perusall recommends is that you set up your grading to add up to more than 100%. And this was a little weird to me at first, but what I realized is it allows students to get to their points in the way that works best for them. So you can do the standardized scoring, or you can completely customize it. And so, for example, no more than 60% of their grade can be from posting comments, right? But I can decide what that threshold is. So I said for the summer, if they post 3 comments, 3 high quality comments, then they get 60% of their points from that. But that's not the only thing they can do to get their whole point. So it's not like, they post 5 times, pepper their post and disappear, and they get their whole 50 points. 60% of their grade counts. Open the assignments. I said that's 20% of their grade. And I've got screenshots to show you how this worked. If they read to the end of all of the documents, they can have up to 20% of their grade. Active engagement time, I think I said 30 minutes. They by far exceeded that in most cases. Getting responses, upvoting or getting upvotes, and I didn't use any quizzes, but you can count that. So you see, this is well over 100%, but as I'm going to show you, students got to their points in different ways this way. And so it kind of allowed me to meet students where they want to be in the engagement process. So this is all, like I said, you can use a standardized scoring if you want to, but it's all completely customizable, and I can show that to you as well. Lots of metrics. You can see so much more than you can in the discussion board. So right from the main screen, you get an overall progress. So throughout the entire, I did it Monday through Sunday, the assignment, I could see how many had already gotten their points, how many had done some work but not gotten their maximum score, how many had some work submitted or no work submitted. And this is an example of a week in my summer semester. They posted 452 comments. There were 49 questions, 19 of which were unanswered. I'll be honest, some weeks I lost track of how much was being posted, and I tried to go in and answer all the questions, but I just couldn't keep up with it sometimes. On average, my 12 students spent almost 4 hours actively engaged with the material. So this wasn't the only thing they did that week. This was, I want you to read these 3 or 4 articles and engage with them. And on average, my 12 students spent almost 4 hours, which to me, having a lot of history with online learning and discussion boards, I would never expect my students to spend almost 4 hours in a discussion board. I mean, I'm the same as everybody else. I know what students do. They pop in on Wednesday and post their posts. They pop in on Sunday and reply to 2 students, and they go, I'm done. But my students in Perusall came in every day to see what was going on. So I was really shocked, to be honest, that I was getting almost 4 hours of engagement a week. So I said there's lots of metrics. I have some examples here, and I might need to zoom in on some of this, which is why I did my presentation the way I did. So there's my students with the names removed for a week of lesson. And so if I look at my students, I can see each student, how much time they spent in Purusall, but I can also see how much time was active. In other words, they were moving around, they were posting. So I can tell, like, somebody maybe opened up Purusall, it says 2 days, but they really were active 2 hours. So it's very likely they opened Purusall and left it open and walked away. But they were actually active for over 2 hours, closing in on 3 hours. So they really were working. I can see the total number of comments. I could see how many individual new threads they started, how many responses. So between the threads and the responses, that's your total comments. I can see how many non-questions how many non-question posts they gave up upvotes to, how many questions they gave upvotes to, non-question upvotes received, and question votes received. Obviously, what it's picking up on is a question mark, right? I can see the total word count and the average word per comment. So I was looking at this earlier and kind of thinking, how do I want to really show this to you? Is we can look at somebody like this who spent actively 48 minutes. They posted 3 comments. One was an initial comment and 2 were responses. So you say, well, they weren't very engaged. But if you look, the average number of words in their post was 31 words. So, I mean, they were engaged. This just wasn't somebody that wanted to initiate a conversation, but they were picking up on somebody else, and they were posting enough, 31 words. It wasn't like they were just saying, good job, which we all see in discussion boards all the time, right? But I could see somebody else who posted 16 times, 11 new started threads, but each one of their posts on average was 15 words. So, you have students that come at it from different places. We see this in discussion boards, but the reality is they all posted, they all got their full points. They just did it from different places in the conversation, if you will. And I can show you that. Again, I'm really going to zoom in here, but I'm going to show you 2 different students. So this is the first student. Remember, I showed you the heuristics, and it showed that 60% of their grade can come from posting. And so this person this week posted 50 comments, but that was 60% of their grade. So, they only have to have 3 high quality, and I'll show that on the next screen, high quality posts, but they chose to post 50 times, 1,474 words, average was about 30 words per comment. They got full points for opening their assignment. They didn't quite read to the end. They read 97%. As an educator, being able to see this and know who's reading and who's not was really helpful. They were actively engaged. I can see 244 minutes that week, and they got their full points for that. And at the end, you can see that they exceeded what I expected for them. They were at 149%. If I compare that to this other student and I look at how they earned their points differently. So like they didn't receive any points for getting responses. They still did 128% effort. They posted 8 comments. Let's see, they opened it 14 times, but they only read 59% of the content. Disappointing. And I might reach out to this student and say, hey, make sure you're reading all these articles. You'll do better in the quizzes, or, you know, maybe you'll understand better. So I know who's reading the content and who's not. But they were actively engaged 98 minutes, and they did a lot of upvoting. So they, you know, maybe they read comments and they just did a thumbs up. They didn't necessarily make a comment, but they still earned all of their points. Again, I like that students can get their participation points, but they don't all have to get it from the same place. Whereas, as we know with a discussion board, it's post once, responded to, and that's the only way you get your points usually. I can also see at the individual student level, I can see the comments that they posted, and I have the little arrows that tell me if it's a reply or a new one. I can see the number of words, and then Perusall looks at the number of words in the posting and tells me whether it's high, medium, or low. So a comment that's just a reply, it's 4 words, that's a low quality. I set my grading heuristics. Then in order to get the full points for that part of the assignment, they had to post at least 3 high quality. If I teach this class again next summer, I'll probably make it 4 or 5, just because I know now how many times they post. But I can see the quality. I can see how many upvotes, how many replies, when they created, and the last time that there was an edit to it. So just a lot of granular information that I can see and continue to watch throughout the week and throughout the semester. I can see what articles were really, the week that I did the article about a head transplant, it blew up. But the week that I was talking about dementia care, maybe it was a little bit lower. So kind of helps me see what students are interested in and what they enjoy talking about. And I'm going to stop here and just say, are there any questions before I go to my next point?
There's one in the chat.
Okay, let's see. All right. How did the books from the Purusall catalog work? Have you used these? I used an open source book, and it was a Creative Commons, and I pulled it up in Adobe, and I broke it out by chapters and just put it in as items for students to read. And I told them it was a Creative Commons work. I don't know how the Purusall catalog works. I think you work through the bookstore, and they just purchase the book, and it's available in Purusall. That's what I've read, but I have not personally done it myself. It worked really well to have the chapters though work, and I liked it because I knew they were reading the chapters. Any other questions before I go on to number 5? Okay, I want to keep moving because I want to show you how to set up an assignment, go through it. Yes, Igor, did you have a question?
Yeah, there's another chat from Laura.
It is free of charge. There's no charge. When the students first sign up for a Purusall, it says, would you like to pay? And you just tell them no. The university has a subscription. There's no charge for anything.
I'm sorry. I used to use Perusall. I'm sorry, but when I was creating my courses for this semester, it says that the university didn't have hadn't bought the access, so my students need to pay, or I need to pay.
No, it comes up and it makes it look like you have to pay. You don't. I'm using Purusall this semester. You just skip over that and say, no, you don't want the students to have to pay anything. They don't have to pay. It's more like they want to encourage you. If you read that page, it says, how are you going to promote it? Are you going to pay? Are you going to make the students pay? Are you going to just share Purusall with your peers? And I just say, I'll share Purusall with my peers. You do not have to pay, and the students do not have to pay at the University of Tennessee. And I can't show you that because it only shows up when you first set up a course, but there was no charge involved. And I tell students, when you first set up your account, just say, no, you're not going to pay. Okay, the next thing I really liked was, and I kind of already touched on this, was the increased student engagement. I would never expect in 12 students in a summer class with a traditional discussion board to post 452 comments in a week. But I got that from Perusall. And what I have here is a screenshot that shows me the comments for one article 1 week. So you can see they're talking to each other. These numbers next to it indicate that other students have responded. There's a conversation going back. So a good example is like this one here. This student, this is not a high quality response, but this student pointed to a point in the article and just said this, and 2 other people replied. So, just sort of that quick conversation. And that's what students said they liked, is they didn't have to remember what they read and then go over to the discussion board and just, explain what they read so that students know, where they're getting it from. They could just point at it and say, I really think this is important. This is really interesting. They were able to just point at it, make the comment, and move on with the article. So it felt much more immediate and real time. So this is a different week. Strangely enough, 49 questions and 19 unanswered, just like the previous, but 452 comments for this week. I should add that I can see all of the comments. Students only see the comments in their group. So if they're only in a group of, say, 4, they're not going to see 452 comments. They'll just see the comments among their own groups and anything I post. Sixth thing I like, students actually read the material. And I showed you an example where I could see it, a student didn't, but overall I would go in and look, and consistently the students read all or almost all of the content by the end of the week. Oftentimes they would open the articles 20, 30, 40 times, and they would be active for quite a time. And this is a comment that I received from one of my students, actually a really good student. So I was surprised that she usually skims, but she said, I absorb the information better with Purusall because it kind of forces you to read all the articles thoroughly. I have a tendency to skim them otherwise. This was a comment that was made in the 3rd week of the semester. I told the students straight up, this is a science experiment. We're going to try it for 2 weeks, and then I'll let you decide if we're going to continue to use it for the semester or we'll go back to traditional discussion boards. And so this was her feedback about her experience in 2 weeks of Perusall. The next thing I like is peer review. I have used this a couple of times and will be using it this semester for anonymous peer review. So in my view, I can see everybody that makes comments. I can see their initials and I can find their names. But when I set it up, I can make it fully anonymous. So I take their names off the paper and I put them in small groups that include their paper. So they know one of the papers is theirs, but they can't see who's making comments. And so I had a lot of commentary. So they had a paper due. I made this peer review optional. It's going to be required this semester. And they helped each other. So they made comments like, you need to put a citation in. This sentence requires a citation. Good job. Some of them were like, this is a really good comment. This is really interesting information. Sometimes they pointed out typos. So it saved a lot of work on my end because they proofread each other, but I was able to do it in a way that they didn't know who was commenting on their paper. So I will continue to use Purusall for this purpose. Again, always have used it in the past. I've used it optionally. Now it's going to be a required element in my biostats course. Let's see. Oh, look, I reversed the numbers. There's my mistake. You always make a mistake, right? My numbers are all messed up. Sorry. The next thing is just the positive feedback that I received from students. You always have to make sure you're not perfect, right? As an instructor. So again, I had 12 students in an 8-week course, and some of the comments that I got here, it's something new to me and a breath of fresh air. It doesn't seem as demanding and is more interactive. I had a student say, I think Perusall adds life to our weekly readings, and I prefer this over the standard discussion boards. Over time, those can get boring, and I believe this is a great tool to keep students engaged. I love being able to reply to comments and thoughts separately compared to normal discussion posts where you have to reply in paragraph form. It helps the flow feel more natural. I like that we can engage as we read. Others can reply at their leisure. It helps to be able to go back and revisit the comments. And I absolutely love doing the readings with Perusall and love the interaction. So some pretty positive comments from my students, which was very meaningful to me because I wanted them to enjoy it. I also wanted to enjoy it. And so the last thing the last item, which was really number 10, is, I've taught a lot of classes. That's why I added in there in my bio that I'm teaching my 40th online class this semester. So I've got a lot of time with discussion boards. It was really fun to try something different and new. I had a lot of fun locating articles and saying, oh, they're going to love this. Head transplant, this is going to be crazy for them to read. So it was in context of the course, but it was really fun because like I set it up for the last week and I was waiting like a spider, just waiting for them to get to that article because I knew the conversation was going to be really, really, really engaged. In fact, some weeks, I'll be honest, I was so engrossed in having so much fun reading the comments and commenting back to them that I had to make myself put it away and say, you can spend an hour and then you have to go do something else, because I would get caught up just like the students. It was really fun from an instructor standpoint as well. And my students said they didn't even notice the class was fully asynchronous. Now, I'm going to say, I did want to make sure that I clarified that I think Perusall worked really well for my Epi of Aging class, because what I needed them to do was read scientific literature and understand it and contextualize it to the lesson and discuss it. So for a fully asynchronous class, for the purposes of my class, it worked really well, but I don't plan to use it everywhere. I'm going to use it in my general Epi class because they also read literature, but I'm not using it everywhere. I don't want to overuse it where then students go, oh, yet another Purusall, like they do with discussion boards. I think that, there is a right tool for the right place, for the right assignment. And I think I've found personally where it works really well is that place where I want them to discuss the reading material. So I'm not in any way saying I still use regular discussion boards for other things, but this might be an alternative that might work well. What I wanted to do with this the last minute before then I open it up to discussions is I thought I would create an assignment for you so you can see what that looks like. Because now you know all the little pieces and now you'll recognize them as I do this. So I have a sandbox and I have a sandbox Purusall. I'll move this out of the way just so it doesn't get in the way. And so this is fake. It's a practice that we use in my department, but I have literature there. So I have a library. It's full of some articles that I've added to the library. Adding content is very easy. I just upload it. And I'm going to create an assignment. So I'm going to go to assignments and I'm going to add an assignment, just a standard assignment. The first thing is the basics. So I give it a name. So I'm going to call this, and I give it a deadline, which everything in my world, I always make due on Sunday at end of day. So I give it a deadline, I give it a name, and then I go to content. And I already have the content in my library. So all I have to do is this drop down and I pick the article that I want. And I want head transplant article. So it brings in the head transplant article. If I want another article, I can add another part. I can move them around. So I can pick another article if I want. Personal identity. I can move these if I want to make one here, and so I can set the reading order. If I have a sequential order I want them to read it in, I can set that up. I like to assign the page ranges for the reason I said earlier. I like to skip the references page. Here's a cover page. I don't care about that. So in this case, I would set the reading for pages 2 through 4. Oops. And now it skips page 1. Nobody reads this. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't count toward whether they read the content or not. And I can do that by article. So this next one, I can also set the range, and it's nice. You can see it. So I'm going to do pages 2. You can do it with your mouse, but sometimes it's a little wonky. And I want them to read through page 5, but I don't want them to read this last page of references. So I'm just going to type it in 2 through 6. And so that's what I'm going to count as their reading. In the options, I can set when they're allowed to see it. So I guess they can see it today. I can put instructions. I can assign it to the entire class, to just specific groups. Groups you can set up in Canvas and they will come through. So if you have groups already, like project groups, you can set them up here through specific groups or the entire class, but exclude students. Maybe they aren't ready for the assignment. Maybe this is extra credit, whatever. You can exclude students if you need to. You can let students decide whether they want to be anonymous. You can prevent it or you can require it, extra credit, and so forth. And then here's your heuristics, and you can use the standard or you can specify. So this is where, like that, the comments, the default is 4. I changed it to 3. So I said they had to have 3 high quality comments. Okay. And then it also has, I think this is the page where you can say, let's see. So deduct up to 10% if all comments are bunched together. So if your student goes to page 1 and posts 3 comments, but nothing on the other pages, you can deduct a portion of their grade because they're only making their comments on the first page. You can decide whether they get half credit if all of their comments are medium quality, no credit. So they can post 100 times, but if they're all low quality, they get no credit. So there's just a lot of customizability for this. I can change my percentage if I want to. Same thing with all of these. Opening the assignment, I gave them the full 20% if they opened it 3 times. Most of the time they opened it 20 or 30 times. So I probably will up that next time. Again, reading to the end, active engagement time, the default is 45 minutes. If they're actively engaged for at least 45 minutes, they'll get that percentage. So hopefully you see there's a lot of ways that you can customize this. Once you've got it all set up, and you can set up the points too, by the way, which I didn't do the first time I did this and I had to go back. So you can set the score range. I set mine at 50 points. You say, okay, it creates the assignment. And then if I go over to my sandbox and I refresh my assignments, you can see it right there. Brown bag example, 50 points. It's got the due date in it. I can edit it. I can add my information, but the assignment was created in Perusall and it came over, and I'll also see it in my grading screen. I've got a lot of stuff in there, so we'll have to, it's probably at the end. Where is it? Brown bag. It's in there. Let's see. You know, I tested this 10 times before I did this. I know it's going to be there. I might have to go out and come back in. Let's see. Some of it takes a second to show up. There it is right there. Brown bag example. So when I grade that in Perusall, it'll automatically send over that grading. So I won't have to double enter it. Grading looks like this. You can see the points as they come in and you can adjust them if you want to. If you're good with the grading, then you just click the button at the bottom and it'll send that grading over. And these are tests, these aren't real students. So that's how easy it is to set up an assignment. Within the assignment, this is where you can see everything. You can see the analytics. So during the week, I can see things like, I can see a student activity report, which is similar to that screen that I showed you before, and it shows it by document. So I can see whether they've read all 4 documents or not. I can see how far they're going. I can run reports. I can extend the deadline. I can edit the assignment. It's all just through that dashboard. So that's what it looks like. Yeah, so I mean, it was pretty easy. Is it perfect? No. Does it answer every single need for every single class? No. But I did find that it worked really well for me. I will use it again, especially when I want students to truly read and discuss material. I'd like to add a textbook to it. I think that would be really interesting.